Tonight, Ariel Sharon, the 77-year-old Prime Minister of Israel, is in critical condition tonight after 5 hours of emergency brain surgery today, the third major operation since Wednesday to stop the bleeding in his brain after suffering a stroke. And while the Prime Minister is fighting for his life in Jerusalem, Pat Robertson sparked some controversy again with these comments.
He was dividing God's land. And I would say woe unto any Prime Minister of Israel who takes a similar course to appease the EU, the United Nations, or the United States of America. God says, this land belongs to me. You better leave it alone.
But is this much ado about nothing? Joining us now from Fort Lauderdale, Florida is Janet Folger, host of Faith to Action on the VCY America radio network. And here in the studio, Paul Levinson, the brand new chair of the Media Studies Department at Fordham. All right, Ms. Folger, let's start with you. Your reaction to those comments and your thoughts about the criticism being directed at Pat Robertson again.
Well, let me first say that I've been praying for the Prime Minister. I've encouraged the Faith to Action listeners to do the same, and I think that's very important. We keep our focus on praying for his health and his recovery. But I don't pretend to speak for Pat Robertson, and I can't speak for God. By the way, he's got a position paper, he's got a book out, and has a pretty pro-Israel position in it. But rather than focus on the one private citizen, what I'd rather focus on is a policy of kicking Israeli citizens out of their homes and turning Gaza into a terrorist superstore. I think that's where the focus should be, on the policy of kicking Israel out, making them less secure.
Yeah, but Janet, this is not a geopolitical debate. I mean, Pat's been criticized, and I know Pat, know him well. Pat's been criticized because, you know, he's saying this as this man is presumably dying, and people are hammering him for it, say, you know, here he goes again. I mean, do you think that that's a fair criticism of him?
I think that we've got. I'm not going to be another voice that's going to bully up against Pat Robertson. I think that really the bully principle that we're looking at here in Israel is that when you acquiesce, when you give in to the demands of terrorists, they're going to demand more, and that's really the policy that, frankly, we in America have a hand in.
Yeah,
we're the ones that pressured Ariel Sharon into doing this.
All right, your feelings about this, Mr. Levinson. I mean, is the media sort of grabbing at everything Pat says and tries to blow it up? Look, you saw his statement, right? It wasn't a statement out of some mean guy. He claims that he was quoting the book of Joel, and if you read the book of Joel and what it says here, you know, he's basically saying, his people are saying, look, it wasn't him, it's something that he quoted out of Scripture.
Well, I have an enormous amount of respect for the Scripture, but frequently when people in our modern age try to apply it literally in a fanatical way, it leads to graceless, absurd statements such as Pat Robertson made. If you think about the fact the only other public figure who's commented about Sharon's dying being appropriate in any way is the president of Iran, who's a fundamentalist Islamic nutcase.
Now, you're not trying to compare Pat Robertson to this lunatic over in Iran.
I hope not.
I'm comparing two people who are fundamentalists and who don't seem to have a modern view of the world. Don't seem to understand that a prime minister, you know, shouldn't be judged according to Scripture when he's on his deathbed.
So let me ask you this then. I mean, are you saying then that what's written in the Bible cannot be applied today? You said that, you know, what we're doing is trying to apply things too literally. Don't you think in America today we barely apply it at all too much of the time?
No, I think we apply it just fine in the United States.
But when you look
we
at,
have a diverse society with many
when we look at,
interpretations.
when we look at the problems with character and integrity, whether it's professional athletes, the pop culture, whatever, I mean, aren't you basically saying that, you know, let's modernize the whole book? And I think what Pat Robertson is saying, rightly or wrongly, is the book shouldn't be modernized. It ought to reflect what that Old Testament says.
I'm not saying that the Old Testament is wrong. I'm saying that the literal application of it to a prime minister who is trying to bring peace to his region when he is on his deathbed is a very inappropriate statement.
Fair point. Now, Janet, what I need to know from you is when Pat does things like this or says things like this, and I think you would agree it wasn't the appropriate time. You agree with that? It was just not the right time to be talking about this.
The time you make statements like that is when he can actually do something about it.
All right,
you say, hey, you know
inappropriate.
What? Don't divide the land.
Right, inappropriate time. The question is, Does Pat sort of undermine the movement when he makes a statement like this that he might, he says it's been taken out of context or whatever? Does it undermine the movement, the Christian movement? And people say, I'm not going to listen to that.
You know, I'm not going to be another voice to bully up and beat up on Pat Robertson. He's free to defend himself, and he's very capable of it.
But I want to know what you think
about it. But I don't think you can blame him for reading from the Bible.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, the way I read the Bible, it talks about nations that bless Israel are going to be blessed, nations that curse Israel are going to be cursed. And I'll be honest with you, where I am worried about the judgment being cast is we need to look in the mirror, because we're one of the groups, the nations that actually strong-armed the Prime Minister into giving up land, making them less secure.
All right. Now, I got you. Now, People for the American Way, Professor, against flag desecration, they're not like some mainstream group. They're way out there. It's like they grab everything that Pat says. They monitor everything he says. You're in communications. Have we gotten to the point now in America where, with the blogs, the 24-hour news cycle, you can't say anything? It's going to be analyzed, overanalyzed, taken out of context. Don't you think that's fair?
No. Criticism of what public figures say is a crucial part of dialogue in a democratic society, which we have. We don't live in a totalitarian state where religious or political leaders can say whatever they please and they're beyond criticism. So Pat Robertson chose to say this in a public forum, and I think that he's fair game for criticism. It's not the end of the world that he said it. I don't think he should be executed. I'm not